And we want to join Rikki Klieman now by phone. She's our CBS News legal analyst. Bring her in to get more reaction. Rikki, we just heard Paula say she wasn't surprised by the decision. How about you? Were you surprised?
I'm only surprised because it came out of the Fourth Circuit as opposed to the Ninth Circuit. I think everyone believes that the Ninth Circuit, being one of the more liberal circuits in the country, if not the most liberal, will be the one that would certainly uphold the block on the travel ban. The Fourth Circuit, not so much. But the questions that Paula was there to witness and that we were able to listen, read, and see during the oral argument certainly showed that some of the justices on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals were very, very concerned not only with the rhetoric of campaign Donald Trump, but also with the rhetoric, the tweets, and statements not only of the President Trump, but also his advisors and his representatives. We have to remember that we had heard that the wording of the second travel ban was really exactly the same in intent as the first travel ban. And then we also heard from Rudy Giuliani on television that what we were looking at was he was asked to find a way to block Muslims that would be legal. So ultimately, if a court is going to consider those extrajudicial statements, those statements that go beyond the paper of the executive order, that at that point you understand how they came to the decision that they did. One of the things that you look at here is why the administration is so intent on taking this up to the full court, because we do know that the ultimate power on immigration and questions of national security does rest with the executive, rests with the president. So that is just a rule of law. It's the problem of the extraneous statements that made this look like a ban on Muslims and certainly a ban on a religion. So I think that the Trump administration probably has been advised, but has turned it down, to do this quote-unquote extreme vetting while it's had far more than 90 days to do it while the immigration is continuing.
Yeah, one of the words that was used, or one of the phrases that was used often, the power is not absolute that the president has there. And it seemed from even talking to Paula and in reading this decision that it was this central question of those past statements that you reference going up against what the executive order says specifically. And it's up to the justices then to weigh in on which matters more. Is that correct?
Well, ultimately, that's what happened with this court. And you know that the government has argued very vociferously that the order is the order and that you cannot go beyond the four corners of the order. But this court, you have to remember, you've got a 205-page document here of this opinion. And the first, if I'm correct, is I skimmed it because I'm quick, but I'm not that quick.
None of us are.
205 pages. The first 147 pages go to the affirming of the district court order, which, of course, upholds the block. So that's a lot of material. But ultimately, the court is looking at the First Amendment Establishment Clause, that in this country you shall not favor one religion over another. And that's what they believe happened here.
One quote from Judge Paul Niemeyer, who was part of the dissenting opinion, said, regrettably, at the end of the day, the real losers in this case are the millions of individual Americans whose security is threatened on a daily basis by those who seek to do us harm. But that argument apparently not enough?
Well, the problem with the argument is that it's fallacious. Because what we have found is that in the United States of America, when we have had terrorist acts, it has not been from people who have come from those enumerated countries. And one of the things that became so difficult about this travel ban, both Executive Order 1 and 2, was that we have just seen, as recently as this week, when you have an act of horrendous terrorism in Birmingham, England, that what you have is a natural-born citizen who has happened to have gone to Syria or Libya and come back. But the reality is Are we going to start banning people from Great Britain? Are we going to ban people from Brussels, from France, from other places that we consider Western Europe, simply because they might be people who could be terrorists? Well, that is just not going to happen, or we would have no immigration whatsoever. That
incident in Manchester, England there. Now, Paula mentioned the Ninth Circuit also will take a look at this. You've got the Fourth Circuit ruling here. What is next?
Well, what you have is you will wait for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I expect them to rule the same as the Fourth Circuit. I would be surprised if they ruled differently. But the government has the right to take this up to the United States Supreme Court. And perhaps if they see now that the court has a balance of 5-4 with the addition of Judge Gorsuch, who is now in the Antonin Scalia seat, that perhaps the government feels confident that they could get this overturned.
Rikki, is there any, you mentioned the balance, and now obviously President Trump has put another justice on that Supreme Court, but any indication that how the U.S. Supreme Court would rule beyond that?
No indication, I think, ultimately at this point in time. You could go back and look at precedent,
right,
and you can go back and look at the statutes, but we haven't seen what this court is doing yet. We have to see how this court ultimately gels. And as I think has been argued many, many times about this order, if you divorce the president, his representatives, and his advisors' comments, certainly the order on its face is valid. But if you add in those comments, there is a ruling, and now multiple rulings, that it is discriminatory in its intention. So does the government decide they want to go up to the Supreme Court? Ultimately, that will be their considered decision, because you're not going to have two circuit courts, the Fourth and the Ninth, that are going to disagree, which is only my prediction, of course.
CBS News legal analyst Rikki Klieman. Rikki, thank you as always.
Thanks, Dana.